and he even had to break into his house along with one of his neighbours when the doors were locked and he was visibly lying unconscious in his underwear on the floor of one of the front rooms of the house in the wintertime in sub-zero temperatures.
In July of this year, a story right out of a pulp comic hit the headlines. The Gardaí, the Irish police, announced they had seized up to €400,000 worth of gold from a vault in South Dublin belonging to a fringe far-right party. This revelation opened a can of worms on a bizarre story featuring internal power struggles, stolen gold, and an attack by hammer-wielding anti-fascists. The drama also featured the ousted leader being put on blast by his second-in-command in a press conference for his history of alcoholism, alleged Roman salutes, and a penchant for posting Hitler quotes that left many wondering what the fuck is going on with the National Party. Before we start, if you haven't already, hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel. The National Party, or An Party Náisiúnta, is a minor far-right political party founded in 2016. The party combines Irish nationalism with anti-immigration and conservative values. The party has had no mainstream electoral success during its 7-year existence, but has been steadily growing its base. The party's former leader, Justin Barrett, first came to political notoriety as a member of anti-abortion organisation Youth Defence, in its unsuccessful opposition to the divorce referendum in 1995, having previously been a member of Young Fine Gael. During his time in Youth Defence, he wrote a self-published book entitled The National Way Forward, in which he called for, amongst other things, a government inspired by God. In this book, he advocates for an authoritarian leader to take executive control of the state in order to steer it without interference. Barrett also said some pretty mad stuff in relation to abortions, calling for jail time for women who receive them and the death penalty for doctors who perform them.
What should happen to the doctors who give the abortions?
Death penalty.
Aside from Youth Defence, Barrett also attended events hosted by Fuerza Nueva, the group responsible for the Bologna train station bombing, as well as attending meetings held by the German neo-Nazi group NDP. But two heads are better than one, and after floating around the right-wing scene for 2 decades, Barrett founded his own party in 2016 with his friend James Reynolds. The party is governed by 9 tenets, which feature a commitment to govern the 6 counties in Northern Ireland, the complete banning of abortion, as well as the restoration of the death penalty. In the same year, Barrett called for a complete ban on Muslims entering Ireland for national security reasons. Barrett's right-hand man, James Reynolds, is a farmer from County Longford, who was also involved in the Youth Defence campaigns in the 90s. Reynolds, in a 1992 hot press expose of the organisation, was noted for his fondness of Mussolini, his desire for the resurrection of the death penalty, and the need to vet politicians for their pro-life views. He also allegedly said on live radio that Fine Gael TDs Nuala Fennell and Nora Owen would have been put up against the wall and shot in Francoist Spain. Reynolds was formerly the chairman of the Longford branch of the Irish Farmers Association and the treasurer of the Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association, before being dismissed by both for his anti-EU views and involvement in far-right politics. The party that Barrett and Reynolds formed primarily engaged in leafleting campaigns across the island, forming small networks of activists and surfing the global wave of far-right skepticism over the COVID-19 pandemic and immigration. They were on the front line at a raft of anti-immigration protests in late 2022 and 2023 under the tagline "Ireland belongs to the Irish", including a major blockade of the M50, Dublin's main motorway artery, by protesters. The actions of the National Party are part of a wider far-right movement that has sprouted from the pandemic. Recent anti-immigration protests have been amplified by the country's housing crisis and growing homeless numbers, with the recent introduction of Ukrainian refugees adding fuel to the fire. This came to a head in recent demonstrations by anti-government groups outside the Dáil, Ireland's national parliament, which saw a number of politicians harassed and an effigy of government and opposition TDs being mounted on a gallows. While the party may be gaining traction in fringe right-wing circles, their electoral track record is fairly unimpressive. The party did not secure a single seat in the 2020 general election, and when leader Justin Barrett chose to stand in the Dublin-based South by-election in 2021, he took home only 0.7% of the vote, with 183 votes going to him. To add to the embarrassment of the poor result, Barrett arrived at the polling station flanked by 4 masked men, like some sort of dictator. This humiliating by-election might have been the moment that his days as party leader became numbered. A year later, on the 14th of November 2022, 5 people were hospitalised following an attack by anti-fascist activists on the National Party Ard Fest, or annual conference, at the Lough Erne Resort in County Fermanagh. According to attendees, the conference was attacked by masked, hammer-wielding men and a scuffle ensued. Emergency crews were dispatched to the scene and a 34-year-old man was arrested and charged with criminal damage and possession of an offensive weapon. However, the true day of reckoning for the party's former Führer came on the 23rd of July 2023, when the party released a statement that a considerable amount of gold had been removed from the party's vault in South Dublin. Barrett went on to say that he had provided Gardaí with the names of 2 individuals he believed were responsible for the theft, who Gardaí subsequently visited and confiscated the gold from. Gardaí also visited the vault where they found further gold bars which they also seized. While people scratched their heads as to why the National Party was hoarding gold, an internal power struggle was now in full swing. Shortly after this, Barrett had become locked out of the party's social media accounts, with his wife tweeting on the 30th of July that the dismissed former national organiser Paul Conroy had taken control of the social media accounts and the website and was attempting to scrub any record of the former leader. Paul Conroy is alleged to be a major force within the National Party and responsible for much of its organisation as well as holding the membership lists. So why then was he dismissed? Well, according to online sources, during major anti-refugee protests in East Wall, flags and political banners were not allowed by the organisers. Justin Barrett had ignored this request, which led to an altercation with the East Wall organisers. From then on, a dispute developed between Barrett and Conroy over displaying the party banners and signs at the protests, leading to Conroy refusing to hand over the banners to Barrett for one such rally, which resulted in Conroy's eventual dismissal as national organiser and a power grab against Barrett. Shortly after this, James Reynolds announced that he will be assuming the role of interim party leader and overseeing a process of root and branch reforms within the party. The coup had well and truly begun. Barrett rejected the coup on his personal Telegram channel, insisting it was not he who had been expelled from the party, but rather James Reynolds, and that there was no mechanism by which he could be removed as leader according to the party's own constitution. But with just under 700 followers, Barrett had been beaten at the propaganda game. The coup was effectively complete. The rebels had locked Barrett out of the social media, purged evidence of his leadership online, and also changed the bank details for donations. But what was going on with the gold? After the Gardaí stepped in and retrieved the gold, they required its owner to provide receipts and proof of ownership. A Garda source told the Irish Independent, "No one linked to the National Party has come forward to try and claim the gold. If a person admits to owning it, they have to admit who gave it to them or how its purchase was financed. No one has come forward." The ownership of the gold, or how it was even acquired, is somewhat murky. The Gardaí have said that the gold is likely owned by different individuals within the party, who will have to come and claim ownership of their share to have it returned. Barrett states that he and the party were only in possession of some €45,000 worth of gold, for which he states he has receipts and bank statements. He then states that the remaining €400,000 worth of gold was never the property of the party and is unaware of how it made its way into their vault. Why gold? Well, according to Barrett, the gold was bought in case of a financial collapse, insulating the party against global financial upheaval. Either way, the secret far-right gold made for a good headline across the Irish press. On the 27th of September, James Reynolds released an address on the party's YouTube channel, where he laid all to bear on the former leader. After acknowledging Barrett's contributions to the party, Reynolds went on to slam his lack of motivation, history of alcoholism, as well as a number of personal disputes, which makes for a very difficult watch.
He had to be pressured to do anything, such as simply to record a simple video or even to attend meetings. There was a total absence of any medium or long-term thinking. He fell off the wagon back in 2005 after the Life Institute expelled him in the middle of his Euro election campaign, and he turned into himself and began to drink heavily over the sudden end of his political career that resulted in his withdrawal from involvement in frontline politics, that resulted in the collapse of his first marriage and his first wife leaving him and taking their children with her. And during that period, when he was alone and drinking in the house and living in what I could say were awful conditions, I was his constant visitor and even had to break into his house along with one of his neighbours when the doors were locked and he was visibly lying unconscious in his underwear on the floor of one of the front rooms of the house in the wintertime in sub-zero temperatures. And after breaking into the house, it was quickly discovered that the central heating wasn't on, and I had to call an ambulance, and he was, as he was clearly suffering from hypothermia, and we got him to hospital as soon as possible. Just and afterwards, thank me and that neighbour for saving his life.
Yeah, fairly brutal. He also criticised the leader for failing to make the most of TV interview opportunities, as well as for quoting Hitler and performing a Roman salute at an Ard Feis. Reynolds said in an interview with the Irish Independent at the end of August that he wants to take the party in a more rural direction, and to support those whose livelihoods are being threatened by the Green agenda. He called Barrett the disgruntled ex-leader who is now a beaten docket in the view of National Party members, and said that the party is now focused on local elections in 2024. On his Telegram channel, Barrett continues to argue that he is the real leader. According to him, the party constitution states that a leader can only be appointed at a meeting of the National Directorate. He states that he is the only leader appointed by the National Directorate, and therefore his dismissal as party leader is null and void. He also says that Reynolds has signed this constitution, which was sent to the Irish Electoral Commission, and that it is legally binding. This dispute might spell more trouble for the party. According to Barrett, Bank of Ireland has frozen the party's bank account, while alleged correspondence from the Electoral Commission has stated that if there is no reconciliation, they will deregister the National Party. A public dispute is never good for optics, and it's unsure if the membership and donors will warm to the new leader. The situation with the gold has also triggered an investigation by the Standards in Public Office Commission. All that is to say, things are not looking good for the National Party. But if there's any lesson to be gleaned from all of this, it's that you can't trust anyone, and that even your best friends will turn on you and steal your gold. An unverified source close to the National Party leadership has claimed that James Reynolds intends to run in the European elections next June as an independent. This signals two things. One, that Reynolds may intend to resign as leader of the National Party, and two, that the current leader is trying to distance himself from the party's image. Further to this, if the Electoral Commission rules in favour of Barrett or dissolves the party, then Reynolds will have no choice but to run as an independent. While the National Party remains fringe, and this latest upheaval within the party shows that they're probably not the most stable organisation in the world, right-wing sentiment is growing in Ireland. There are plenty of other groups on the rise within that scene, and with the rising cost of living, high rates of immigration and an abysmal housing crisis, we can only assume that this trend will continue. In a state where two centre-right parties have dominated politics since independence, the emergence of a serious far-right political movement would mark a turning point. Local elections might see right-wing candidates gain ground as economic pressure and anti-government sentiment grow. Sinn Féin, the main opposition party, has become a high-priority target for the right, who are battling for voters in working-class areas that Sinn Féin previously dominated. While nothing is certain if the success of right-wing parties like the AfD in Germany and the Sweden Democrats in Sweden are anything to go by, the right could, for the first time in history, become a fixture of Irish politics. Council is an independent media platform, and our funding comes from you, the viewer. So if you enjoyed this episode, please give us the price of a pint on Patreon so we can continue to produce videos like this one. Every donation helps, and until next time, slán go fóill.